Sheila Carter had a big smile on her face. Not a smile that makes you nervous. Not a fake smile. But a slow, happy smile that said a lot without saying a word. It was the kind of smile that stayed on her face long after the damage was done. It was the smile of a woman who knew she had won something, even if no one else could see what it was yet. Taylor's stomach turned. "How can you stand there?" Taylor finally said, her voice sharp but shaking. "After everything you've done and look so happy with yourself?" Sheila tilted her head and pretended to be innocent, but her eyes sparkled with laughter. "Oh, Taylor," she said softly as if she were sweet. "You therapists always want things to make sense. But life doesn't always work that way." Taylor stepped forward, her anger barely under control. "You've ruined lives. Families. You've hurt my kids, my friends, and people who trusted you. And now you want me to believe this small act." She pointed to Sheila's calm demeanor. "That you've changed." Sheila laughed a little and shook her head. "I don't expect you to believe anything. I don't need you to," she said, pausing before adding, "because whether you like it or not, I got exactly what I wanted." Taylor then understood what really scared her. Sheila wasn't lying. At Forrester Creations on the other side of town, the tension was just as high, but it was hidden behind fancy dresses and fake smiles. There was a lot going on at the fashion house, but underneath it all, people were feeling very angry. Rich Forrester stood by the design table and looked down at a bunch of sketches, but he didn't really see them. His mind was far away, full of guilt, regret, and a nagging feeling that something had gone very wrong. He had been stuck between two women, two worlds, and two versions of himself for years. Now once again, Sheila Carter had gotten into the chaos like a poison that wouldn't go away. Brooke Logan quietly watched him from the other side of the room. That far-off look was all too familiar to her. Ridge had the same look on his face every time his past and present clashed violently. "Sheila's still in your head, isn't she?" Brooke asked softly. Ridge sighed and rubbed his temples. "She never really left." Brooke's lips were thin and tight. "Ridge, she's dangerous. You already know that. We all do." "I don't get how anyone could think differently." Ridge thought for a moment before saying, "I don't think she's changed. But I think she thinks she has. And that could be worse." That night, Sheila sat alone in her small apartment's dimly lit living room, sipping a glass of wine. The quiet was soothing. There was no yelling, no blaming, no chaos this time. Just the sound of the city outside and the steady beat of her own heart. She thought about the time with Taylor over and over again, enjoying every second. Taylor's disgust. Her anger at what was wrong. She didn't understand how Sheila could feel like she had won without anyone else knowing. Sheila had always lived on the outside, where she was hated, hunted, and feared. People had seen her as the bad guy in everyone else's story for so long that they forgot she had her own story and reasons for doing things. And now, finally, she felt a sense of closure that no prison sentence or court ruling could ever give her. Sheila raised her glass and said to herself, "They'll never see it. And that's okay." She smiled again as she took a slow sip. That night, Taylor couldn't sleep. Sheila's face haunted her every time she closed her eyes. It was that calm certainty and strange sense of satisfaction. It went against everything Taylor stood for. People like Sheila weren't supposed to be at peace. They were supposed to feel bad, guilty, and ashamed. Sheila didn't look free, though. Taylor sat up in bed and ran her fingers through her hair. She was a psychiatrist, so she knew better than to make things too simple when it came to how people act. But as a mother and a woman who had watched Sheila cause trouble for years, she couldn't bring the two truths fighting inside her together. Taylor whispered angrily, "She doesn't deserve this." But even as she said it, she wondered if her disgust came from her morals or her fear. The next day at the beach house, Steffi Forrester paced the living room, and you could see how worried she was. Finn watched her closely, and his face showed how worried he was. Finn said softly, "You're thinking about her again." Steffi stopped all of a sudden. "How can I not? Sheila almost ruined our family. And now I hear she's acting like she's at peace with the world." Finn thought for a moment. "People can surprise you." Steffi snapped at him. "Not her. Don't say that. Please." Finn put his hands up to protect himself. "I'm not standing up for her. I just mean that maybe she's done chasing after chaos." Steffi laughed. "She is a mess." Taylor finally faced Ridge at the Cliff House. She couldn't keep quiet any longer. Taylor said plainly, "Sheila is having a good time. All of it." Rich frowned. "Enjoying what?" Taylor said. "The fact that she got under everyone's skin without doing anything. She doesn't need to be forgiven. She doesn't need to be accepted. She just needs to know that she still matters." Rich thought about that and it made him feel uneasy. "And what does that mean for us?" Taylor's eyes got hard. "That we're letting her win." Days went by, and Sheila was still unusually quiet. No plans. No outbursts in public. No desperate attempts to get into anyone's life. That alone made everyone more uneasy than any dramatic stunt ever could. That afternoon Brooke said what everyone else was thinking. "This calm. It's not normal." Steffi nodded. "It's like waiting for an earthquake." But the quake never happened. Sheila went to a small community event instead, volunteered at a local clinic, and kept her head down. The press stopped caring. The whispers stopped. And slowly, painfully, everyone else moved on, but Taylor stayed. Taylor watched from a distance, unable to shake the feeling that something important had changed. Weeks later, Taylor ran into Sheila again at a cafe with a view of the ocean. Sheila looked calm and almost happy as she stirred her coffee and looked out at the waves. Taylor walked up to her table in a stiff, purposeful way. "You think this lets you off the hook?" Taylor asked in a cold voice. Sheila looked up without a care. "No." "Then why do it?" Sheila looked her in the eye. "Because I'm sick of being mad. And I'm sick of needing you to get what I'm saying." Taylor's breath stopped. That answer upset her more than any threat ever could. Taylor snapped. "You can't get redemption without being responsible." Sheila shrugged a little. "Taylor, you can't give me redemption. I choose it for myself." Taylor stared at her, her disgust turning into something darker. The knowledge that Sheila no longer needed her opinion. That night, Taylor told Brooke about her problems, her voice full of emotion. "Brooke, she's happy. Very happy. And it makes my skin crawl." Brooke made a face. "Because you think she's faking it?" Taylor quietly said. "No. Because I don't think she is." Brooke stopped talking, and the weight of that possibility hung between them. Later, Sheila stood alone on her balcony, looking down at the city lights. She wasn't trying to get approval, get back at someone, or take charge for the first time in her life. She had stopped performing for people who would never clap for her anyway. That was what really shook Taylor Hayes to her core. Because she could understand evil. Peace? That was a whole other thing. Sheila closed her eyes and took deep breaths, feeling completely happy. And somewhere else in the city, Taylor was awake again, sickened, disturbed, and haunted by the fact that the people we least want to see at peace are often the ones who find it first. The calm didn't last long. It doesn't happen. Taylor was the first to notice the change, not because Sheila did anything obvious, but because something inside Taylor broke. The disgust she had been holding back in a professional way finally came out in a sharper and more personal way. She started to see Sheila everywhere, in conversations, in silence, and in the way people paused before saying her name. Sheila wasn't there. Sheila didn't need to be anymore. Taylor couldn't pay attention to the speeches or the polite applause at a charity lunch hosted by Brooke. She sat stiffly at the table, her fingers tightly wrapped around her napkin, and her eyes wandered around the room. People laughed. Everyone smiled. Things went on. And Sheila Carter was living in Los Angeles without any problems, or so it seemed. Taylor moved closer to Brooke. "Do you know what she's done?" Brooke looked at her, not sure what to think. "What do you mean?" "She took away our moral high ground," Taylor said in a fierce whisper. "She's not fighting us anymore. She isn't begging. She isn't trying to control. She is just there. Like she deserves it." Brooke frowned. "That might be a good thing, Taylor." Taylor slowly turned to her, her eyes flashing. "No. It's scary." Steffi felt the same way at the beach house. That nagging feeling that the danger hadn't gone away, just changed. She watched Finn and Hayes play on the floor, and the sound of their laughter filled the room. She tried to breathe through the knot in her chest. Steffi said out of the blue, "She hasn't called." Finn raised his head. "Who?" "You know who." Finn let out a sigh. "Steffi, maybe that's a good thing." Steffi shook her head. "No. It's never because Sheila is done when she disappears. Because she made the choice. Finn looked at her closely. Decided what? Steffi took a deep breath. That she doesn't need us anymore. She felt like the words were wrong even as she said them, like they took away some kind of invisible protection she didn't know she had been relying on. Sheila, on the other hand, was sitting across from a social worker in a small office with framed quotes that made her feel good. Her tone was friendly and her body language was relaxed. The woman said, "You seem stable," as she flipped through a file. "Steady work, no problems, no complaints." Sheila smiled politely. "I've put in a lot of effort to better myself." The social worker nodded. "And what do you want to happen next?" Sheila didn't think twice. "Nothing big." That answer hung in the air longer than expected. Taylor couldn't let it go. Taylor asked for a meeting, even though she knew it was wrong and against every professional boundary she had spent her whole life enforcing. She didn't want to be a psychiatrist or an authority figure. She just wanted answers. They met at the same coffee shop with a view of the ocean. Same table. The sound of waves crashing against the rocks below is the same. Taylor said flatly, "You're enjoying this," skipping the small talk. Sheila raised an eyebrow. "You've already said that." "And I was right." Sheila slowly drank her tea. "You're mad because I'm not." Taylor leaned in. "You can't choose not to pay for the damage you did." Sheila said in a calm voice, "I'm not opting out. I'm going forward." Taylor laughed. "You think peace makes trauma go away?" Sheila said softly, "No, but it doesn't make any more." That made Taylor stop dead. Sheila went on, "For years you all needed me to be the monster. Because you were the heroes as long as I was the monster. You kept your families safe from me. You two got close because you both hated me." Taylor's voice shook. "That's not right." Sheila looked her in the eye. "Then why does it bother you so much that I don't need you anymore?" The question hit Taylor harder than she thought it would. Later that night, Rich confronted Taylor because he saw that she was upset. "You met with her again, didn't you?" he asked. Taylor didn't say no. "She changed the rules." Rich frowned. "How?" Taylor said. "She's not looking for forgiveness. She's not even trying to get better. She's just done." Rich let out a slow breath. "That doesn't mean she's safe." Taylor agreed, saying, "No. That means she can't be counted on." Weeks later, the rail break happened. It started out as a small rumor that Sheila had been seen talking to someone from the Forrester past. Nothing real. Nothing that can be proven. Just enough to make people scared. Steffi went right up to Finn. "Did you know about this?" Finn looked shocked. "Know what?" "That she's been talking to people in our circle again." Finn shook his head. "I haven't heard anything." Steffi's voice cracked. "I can't live like this, always waiting for her shadow to fall over us again." Finn held her close, but even though she leaned into him, her eyes stayed open and looked around the room. Taylor got sick to her stomach when she finally figured out the truth. Sheila didn't want to come back. She wasn't planning to get back at him. She wasn't trying to get back what she had lost. She had already won. Sheila made everyone else face something much more uncomfortable: their own inability to move on. She did this by stepping back, refusing to engage, and not giving them the chaos they expected. Taylor sat alone in her office long after sunset, staring at the empty chair across from her desk. This was the chair where patients usually sat to find closure, healing, and forgiveness. Taylor whispered, "She doesn't need treatment. She's already healed in her own way." And that made her sick more than any crime ever had. That night, Sheila stood on the beach with her shoes in her hands and her toes digging into the cool sand as the waves came in. The wind blew her hair around her face, but she didn't bother to fix it. She smiled, not because she'd outsmarted anyone or broken anything, but because the anger was gone for the first time. The city behind her was buzzing with gossip, fear, and unfinished emotional business. There was only the ocean in front of her. That was enough for now. The days turned into nights, and the lights of the city looked like broken glass on the ocean. Sheila had found a strange balance. She looked calm on the outside, was quietly happy, and was unsettlingly untouchable. Taylor was angry that she could move through life so easily. Every look, every word, and every silence was a quiet reminder that Sheila had changed the rules. The villain didn't have to play anymore. The world bent around her lack of care. Taylor couldn't stop thinking about it. Her mind kept going back to Sheila Carter at work, at home, and even during therapy sessions with patients. It wasn't just a moral disgust anymore. It was a real panic. If Sheila could live and even do well without feeling bad about it or saying sorry, then everything Taylor had fought for, every limit, every moral line, and every protection she had given to her family and friends was pointless. And that thought kept bothering her. Taylor drove to the Cliff House one night without even thinking about it. Her knuckles were white as she held onto the steering wheel like it was a lifeline. She didn't know what she wanted to say or do. Maybe she wanted to confront Sheila, demand answers, or just see the enemy up close. The sun had already set by the time she got there, leaving the sky bruised purples and fiery oranges. Sheila was there, barefoot on the balcony with a glass of red wine in her hand and her hair blowing in the wind. She looked out at the ocean as if it were hers alone. Taylor stepped out onto the balcony, her heart racing, ready to let out all the anger she had been holding back for weeks. "Sheila," Taylor said, his voice low but shaking. You're in my head all the time. You've gotten into everything even when you're not doing anything. How do you just live and make us feel like we can't do anything?" Sheila turned slowly, and her eyes stayed on Taylor's with that calm that never wavered. "Taylor," she said softly, as if they were in on a secret, "I don't need to do anything. It's all yours now, the anger, the fear, and the chaos. I have stepped back. The world has been able to carry its own weight. But you can't stop thinking about me." Taylor's fists got tighter at her sides. "You call that peace? You call this happy?" Sheila smiled slowly and without giving in. "It's a win. Taylor, peace is for the weak. Power is satisfaction." Taylor felt it then, a cold wave of understanding washing over her. Sheila wasn't just happy. She was untouchable in a way that no one else had ever been. Every fight, every accusation, and every attempt to control or shame her had failed. Sheila had won, not through violence, manipulation, or threats, but by refusing to let anyone else tell her what to do. Taylor hated it, though. The Forrester mansion was still buzzing with its usual frenetic energy, but there was an undercurrent of unease. Ridge walked around the studio floor, where sketches were strewn about like leaves on the ground. Brooke tried to calm him down, but the tension between them was just like the storm that was building in Taylor's mind. Ridge said softly, "Sheila's calm," as he looked at a dress that was only half finished. "Too calm." Brooke took his hand. "Maybe she's finally moving on, Ridge. Maybe she really is trying to be good." Ridge shook his head. "That's not true. Not for her. You know what she can do when she wants something."